So this is Emily from Chemtopia. I'm in the team of Biocide Regulatory Affairs. Today's topic is Korea BPR implementation. So I'll take a few questions for the Q&A session at the end of the presentation. So if you guys have any questions, then please write on the chat board. I'll take a few questions, and then for the rest of them, I'll take it by email. But anyway, let me start. So as you know, after humidifier disinfectant incident caused lots of casualties in Korea, the Ministry of Environment newly legislated chemical substance related regulation, K-REACH, but incidents related to product level was still occurred. So that's why as of 2019, KBPR was enforced. And also recently, partial amendment was promulgated on March 24, 2020, and draft version of enforcement rule was also promulgated on July 31st, 2020. I'll talk about it in the last section of the presentation. So these are the main contents: brief overview of KBPR, current progress of KBPR, implementation for applicants, and last one is KBPR partial amendment. So let's go on to the brief overview of KBPR. So this slide shows the comparison between KBPR and EU BPR. So for the scope, both KBPR and EU BPR have a similar concept of biocide. So the main regulatory compliances. The main regulatory compliances are approval of active substance, authorization of biocidal product, and using authorized biocidal product on the treated article. And also KBPR has one more scope, which is called household chemical product. This concept will not be handled in this presentation because this concept is not related to the industrial product, but to the consumer product. So if you guys have any inquiries on the household chemical products, then please let me know by email. I will give it to you at the end of the presentation. So back to the biocide issue. For the subject, the obligatory entity of KBPR is Korea-based manufacturer or importer, and only representative will be included after partial amendment is enforced, which will be the next year. And whereas UBPR, the applicants are manufacturer or importer. And for the product types, KBPR has 15, whereas UBPR has 22. I'll talk about it for more detail in the next slide. And for the concept of existing active substance, both KBPR and UBPR have a similar concept, but the date is different. For KBPR, it is the active substance contained in the biocidal product distributed to Korea market before December 31st, 2018, whereas UBPR, May 14th, 2000. And for the approval of active substance, KBPR has two ways. The first one is the joint submission, which is mandatory, but individual submission, also known as opt-out, is also possible only when condition is met. However, for EU BPR, there is no joint submission, only individual submission for the EU BPR. And for the last one, the submission of approval plan, which is kind of new concept, the EU BPR doesn't have. The plan should be submitted within 1 year after the list of existing active substance for deferred approval was announced. I recall the list as a grace list after this slide. Anyway, that was the brief overview. So let's get into the product types, comparison between KBPR and EU BPR. So KBPR has 15 product types, whereas UBPR has 22. It's because when the MOE was legislating KBPR, they mostly used UBPR product types as a reference. Where some of the product types in the UBPR were already controlled by other Korean authorities, such as KFDA, so they only took out the leftover. So KBPR has 15 product types only. So except for those controlled by KFDA, the product types are overlapped each other, the KBPR and UBPR. And also, this slide shows the data requirement comparison between KBPR and UBPR. So basically, the data requirements are overlapped with UBPR. Also, for the KBPR section, some of the numbers are shaded, which requires the test study data. So let's go on to the current progress of KBPR. So this is the timeline. As of 2019, January 1st, KBPR was enforced and notification of existing active substance was submitted by June 30th. And on the date of December 31st, the grace list was announced. In the list, active substance with its product types and suppliers' names were listed. If it is listed, then the supplier granted the grace period of active substance approval. So as of this year, the main regulatory compliances for the applicants of active substance approval are the submission of approval plan and the completion of active substance approval within the grace period. And also, late notification is currently available prior to manufacture or import to grant the grace period. It was changed after the partial amendment is effective. So this slide shows the result of notification of existing active substance. The purpose was to grant the grace period for active substance approval. In total, 741 active substances were listed, including in situ generated active substance, natural substance, and microorganisms. Those three active substances granted maximum grace period, which is 10 years, regardless of their product types. It's because the MOE was trying to figure out how to test or evaluate the dosage of those three substance types. They're still figuring out. And on the right side, you can see the grace list. Well, actually, this is really similar to the Article 95 of EU BPR. So, and also I shaded the name of the active substance suppliers. Well, anyway, the supplier's name should be on the list as well. So implementation for applicants. So this is the checklist for compliance of active substance approval. So when the applicants do not know whether to follow KBPR or not, they can check on these steps. For the step 1, check on the final use of your product, whether it is controlled by other Korean regulation. So if it is not regulated by other Korean regulation, then go on to the step 2. I'll just show it in the later slide. And check the active substance contained in your biocidal product, whether it can be exempted from approval. And if it is not on the exemption list, then go on to the step 3 and check on the grace list in order to see whether your active substance product type and Korea-based applicant's name is listed. If it is listed, then it means the notification of existing active substance was done last year. And join up your consortium and prepare approval plan and then apply for the active substance approval with your consortium members. And when it is not listed, then prepare active substance approval individually prior to manufacture or import. And for step 3, late notification is possible for existing active substance. It will be another chance to grant the grace period. So this is the product types regulated by other Korean regulations. So when you see the slides, when you see the bottom, there's a cosmetic product, which is actually regulated by Cosmetics Act and controlled by KFDA. So it means it is controlled by other Korean regulations, so it doesn't need to follow the KBPR. So this slide shows the exemption of the active substance approval. So there are 4 conditions: low-risk active substance designated by MOE, an R&D purpose, and not intended to sell, such as prototype, and export-only use. So the below chart shows the low-risk active substance published by MOE, which is same as the Annex 1 of EU BPR. So this slide shows the grace period for active substance approval. It is divided into 4 groups depending on the product type. So shortest grace period is 3 years and maximum is 10 years. You can see how long your grace period can be earned depending on the product types. So this slide shows the main information for the joint approval. So joint approval is mandatory for active substance approval. And there are 2 types of consortia. First one is product type consortium, and second one is substance consortium. Also, the IT system for the approval of active substance was opened on January 16, 2020. So you can see it from the below website. And also the system can only be signed up by the manufacturer and importer for now. The only representative cannot sign up at this moment because it will be effective as of next year. So this is the types of consortia. As I mentioned before, there are 2 types. So substance consortium is a parent concept of product type consortium, and only one consortium can be formed per substance. Product type consortium is literally a consortium per product type. So when you see a diagram on the right side, you can see a substance A consortium can have disinfectant product type consortium, insecticide product type consortium, and etc. So in single substance consortium can have multiple product type consortia. And also below information shows the opt-out. So joint approval is mandatory, but opt-out, the individual submission is possible only when one of those 4 conditions is met. Then if the condition is met, then you can get a confirmation from MOE after it is confirmed. But we've tried with the customer clients for the individual submission, and it was actually failed. It was kind of really hard to get the confirmation from MOE at this moment. Anyway, there is a possibility the individual submission could get confirmed. But this slide shows a plan for active substance approval, which is also known as approval plan. So the approval plan is a special concept which EU BPR doesn't have. So the subject for the submission is each member of the product type consortium. And the due date is within 1 year after substance product type and supplier's name is listed on the grace list. And the information requirements are chemical identity and composition, justification for exemption of data submission, data preparation method and schedule, and schedule for risk assessment report preparation. So these are the key points for the approval plan. So as I mentioned, the due date is within 1 year after the grace list is published. And the purpose of this submission of approval plan is to confirm the firm's willingness of approval within the grace period. And if it is not submitted, it will lead to the cancellation of grace period. And the only representative will be, the concept will be effective as of next year. So the submission of approval plan should be done by each member of product type consortium, like a Korea-based importer or manufacturer, until 2020. And on the right side, you can see the IT system for the approval plan submission. So it should be submitted by the electronically. And these are the contents for the approval plan. So for the first one, the chemical identity and chemical composition, which is just the general information of the active substance. And second one is the justification for exemption of data submission. This is the reason why the data submission should be exempted. For example, the impact on human, animal, environment is trivial considering the purpose of using biocides, then it could be one of the reasons. And also unnecessary to submit data scientifically, it means the liquid form of data doesn't have to be submitted for the solid form of scientific data. For example, there's a granulometry, which is actually measuring the particle size of the solid form of active substance, but it doesn't have to be submitted for the liquid form of active substance. So that could be the reason. And also the data which were submitted according to the under KRICH registration, it doesn't have to be resubmitted for KBPR approval. So those could be the justification for exemption of data submission. So this is the example for the approval plan. So when you see this slide, so the applicants has to write down how you're going to prepare the data and when the data will be prepared. For example, just mark it as a generating test report or like a purchasing data, or if the data has an open source data, then you can mark it there. And those kind of things, like how to prepare the data and when the data will be prepared, will be marked in the approval plan. And this is the active substance approval procedure. So when the applicants prepare all the dossiers, they submit it to the NIER, which stands for the National Institute of Environmental Research. And they will begin the dossier evaluation, and notice of initiation will be delivered to the applicants. So from the date of delivery within 1 year, the draft assessment report should be completed and it will be accessible to applicants for 30 days. And the applicants shall submit their opinions on the report within 30 to 60 days, and the opinion will be reviewed whether to approve the active substance within 30 to 60 days. So after it is approved, the approval certificates will be delivered to the applicants. So this whole procedure will take 1.5 years. So those of you who only granted three years of grace period, they should get the certificate within the grace period for the continuous distribution. So the dossier preparation should be done really as soon as possible. And also, even though the active substance was approved, it doesn't mean that it is permanently approved. It has a valid date. For general active substance, we'll have 10 years, and active substance of risk concern will have 7 years. And active substance of risk concern plus it is sensitive to the respiratory system will have 5 years. So those years will be determined by an IER. And this slide shows the data requirement of the active substance approval for KBPR. So when it is compared with the K-REACH over 1,000 tones, the KBPR has more data requirements. So when it is compared with the EU BPR, then the data requirements are well overlapped, but there are slight difference, but it is trivial. And also circle means the core data set. The triangle means the additional data set. The submission of additional data requirement can be different depending on each product type. Also, additional data set is required depending on specific conditions written in the conditions of additional data requirement submission. That is the MOE notice number 2019 103. The scope and method of preparation of data requirements for approval of active substance and authorization of biocidal product. Anyway, there's a MOE notice for the method and preparation for the approval and authorization of biocide. So this is the last section, the KBPR partial amendment. So when you see the amendment, the KBPR partial amendment was promulgated on March 24th, 2020. And the important clauses is the only representative, which will be effective on January 1st, 2021. And also the late notification is possible. It is actually effective now, so the late notification is possible at this moment as well. And also, if the data was submitted for K-REACH registration before, then it doesn't have to be resubmitted for KBPR approval. So it is effective as well. And also there's a principle of minimizing vertebrate animal testing, which will be effective as of next year. And also there's a draft KBPR partial amendment enforcement law, which was promulgated July 31st, 2020. And according to the draft enforcement law, the late notification of existing active substance was changed. For that submission, the use of domestic and overseas regulatory information section is no longer required to submit. And also withdrawal of approval should be submitted by the form of documents if the subject doesn't want to continue the approval process after notification. And also the approval plan, the condition is changed. There's a possibility of no submission of approval plan if the grace period for active substance approval is ended within 1 year from the late notification. It means, for example, for the group 1, they only granted the 3 years of grace period. So the end deadline is the December 31st of 2022. And if the late notification was done within the 2022, then there is no time to prepare the approval plan, like less than 1 year. So in that case, there's a possibility of no submission for the approval plan. So which will be effective as of next year. So this is the take-home message. So the only representative is really welcome, and it will be effective as of next year. And we are really concerned about whether the product type consortia can be well performed, because there are 2 types, and it was really hard to harmonize the opinion within the consortium members. But there are 2 types right now, so it will be really hard. Excuse me. Okay, so and also the approval plan should be submitted within this year if the notification of existing active substance was completed last year. So that was the take-home message.